Glad to know you're still with us. The Central Bank of Nigeria says its gold holdings have risen to $3.5 billion following the addition of locally sourced bullion refined to international standards and incorporated into the country's external reserves. The purchases were executed under the National Gold Purchase Program, which aggregates gold from domestic miners through the Solid Minerals Development Fund. Joining me for more on this is Samuel Oyekomi, Research and Insight Lead, Northern Berger Financial Group. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you very much. Good morning for having me.
All right, so looking at what's been happening, will you say Nigeria came late to the party or is just in time?
Well, I would say it's better late than never, right? But of course, it would have been nicer if it was earlier because, of course, you see the value of gold has risen significantly in recent time, at some point even touching $5,400. But yeah, it's better that we are in the game rather than not being in the game at all. A number of other countries in the world have already made, especially our neighbors, Ghana, have gained significantly from accruing gold reserves. And I think it's quite good that they're also doing the same now.
Right. Given global geopolitical uncertainty and when you also look at inflation risk and some other things in that regard, how important is this as a hedge for emerging market central banks, especially Nigeria?
Yeah, I think it's quite important. First, from a diversification point of view, right? So far, before now, we've always dealt with most of our holdings being in terms of FX, mostly USD. But what you also find out is that also puts us at risk at whatever happens, especially in the US. So there's need for diversification. And whenever there is any fear of global economic recession or whatnot, you tend to find that the USD suffers from this. But then again, safe havens like gold and silver oftentimes gain from those market uncertainty. And what this does for us is that it helps us to hedge against those market uncertainty or volatility that might occur. So I think it's quite significant and a positive one for Nigeria.
All right, so what's your reading of, gold mining in Nigeria so far? You might even want to extend this to solid minerals in Nigeria. How well are we doing in those areas?
Well, not so well. I think earlier this week I was having a conversation somewhere where I was also talking about quarrying, extractive industry as a whole first. And then if you look at that component, you find out that it's just the crude and petroleum bit of that industry that has seen significant growth in recent time. But we know that there are mining activities in the country, but of course we've not seen them in mainstream, right? I think this would help also the government to be able to protect the mining and quarrying industry as much, which could also help to even clamp down on some of the illegal mining activities that we've sensed that has been reported in recent times. So I think there's a lot more that needs to be done in that industry. And of course, this movement to start even gathering gold from local miners as a way of accruing the external reserves also kind of brings that industry into limelight and also helps to track the level of activities in there.
I like what you said about how it's going to help to track, activities in that area. But what do we know about, maybe structure put in place to ensure that that sector is actually cleaned up? And, you also want to look at the fact that artisanal mining accounts for nearly 80% of Nigeria's output. So you also I would like to get your assessments of the responsible sourcing framework that's being alluded to.
Yeah, of course, I would not be able to speak to government initiative around that because, to be fair, I don't know about it. But of course, we can only speak from data that is available to us, and it is quite important that government and all stakeholders are able to track pretty much everything that happens across the economy. One of which is the quarrying or the extractive industry as a whole. In recent time, yes, we've seen some level of growth, but there's not so much transparency around that. I think earlier, some months ago, we saw news around some Chinese doing illegal mining activities in the country. But then the question is, how are we ensuring that these do not keep happening? Or are we able to track some of the level of activities happening in different remote areas of the country where extractive activities are being carried out? I think there's also need for the government to be quite deliberate, which again, in my view, I think this initiative can help to pretty much force them to have a framework that helps to track and ensure that everything that is done around extractive, quarrying, mining industry is also tracked to the latter. Because what we have so far is that it's not been adequately tracked. We cannot confidently say this is the level of output that we get. Because again, mining and querying, what it does for us is that it's supposed to provide us export earnings. But of course, when you look at the numbers, a lot of those still comes from crude. But there are many other things that are also being mined in the country. There's need for us to start receiving value for some of the minerals that we have in the country. And I think this can also help us to shed more light on that.
All right, Samuel Oyekanmi, Research and Insight Lead, Northern Virgin Financial Group. Thank you so much for joining us on the show today and sharing your thoughts with us.
Thanks for having me.